trucker ride in S.E.E. Sunday evening here. We just got shut down less than a couple hours ago here in Mount Sterling at the Pilot. 8.5 hours of driving today. So back on the road this morning. Got up at 5, rounded up the last of my stuff I needed, and got groceries for the truck. Had to get supplies. Been out of the truck for 8 days, and so it was a little bit of adjustment, getting up early and just rocking and rolling and getting back into the groove. Beautiful day, blue skies all day, so couldn't ask for better weather. It definitely got warm once I crossed the Ohio River, up in the low 90s. So the AC was definitely working a tad bit today. But no, we're busy, so get this route finished up. I'm gonna kick off to West Liberty, Kentucky, to Charleston, West Virginia. Then I gotta head out to the southeast corner of West Virginia, over by Covington. Not in Covington, but another small town just west of that. And then shoot down. I got 3 stops in Roanoke, and then I'm going to be heading back towards Bristol, and up by Bristol I'll be heading north up to Whitesburg, Kentucky, then over into central Kentucky to finish up my route, and shoot back in as quick as I can. They said they have some overflow going on, seeing it's a promotional month on the product we're carrying, so therefore things orders went spiked up a little bit. So anyhow, wanted to talk about a little story time, things that this one YouTuber asked me one time. He goes, with all the years you've been on the road, you've probably seen some interesting things or had some interesting things happen to you. And well, this is a situation that happened to me. I think one of the best truck I ever had was my red Mack hooded Superliner. Was at 88. Drove that to 1992, 93. It was strictly a Michigan special, heavy haul, double frame, heavy axles. Back then, I mean, remember this is 1988 specs, but the rear ends had 463 gears, had a 13-speed transmission, the 3406B Caterpillar 4.25 horse, which was then a big boy motor with big boy horsepower, unless you got like the 3408, or which I think they phased out by then in the late 80s. I think it was mid 80s when that stopped. And then the KTA 1100 cubic inch Cummins. We had a couple of those, but they were pretty tired out. So the truck ran great, handled great, air ride cab. It was kind of like the new modern stuff coming in. Drove that truck to about 500,000 miles. So heavy haul. When I say heavy haul, Michigan, you could run 8-axle trailers, 3 on the truck, 11 axles, 164 depending on the axles and the spreads and all that, like I explained before. But for the most part, we were always overloaded. So but I ran that thing for a couple years there. We were running nearly 6 days a week because we were running heavy, because there was hardly any landfills around our area. So I was hauling transfer station waste product compacted. So they definitely had the pressures turned up, and the trailers were compacted because they came out like a solid brick, 48-foot long brick coming out of that truck. So we had slid into a merger by 91, and with that merger, wasted management, which I'm not a fan fave of whatsoever, say as you will, but I worked for them for over 8 years, and I would never work for them again, or any trash company. I'm just not a fan. So stinky, dirty job. after getting out here and doing other heavy haul stuff and this kind of stuff, I won't go back to hauling trash waste. So, uh, the mechanics that came in didn't know much about that particular engine. Everything they had was garbage truck related, so a lot of Max with what do they call those? Not the thermodynes or the econodynes or something like that. It was just a little small motor. I don't know if they were like 672 cubic inch or smaller. Just a little 300 horse motors, and so they were familiar with that and some of the Cummins, 855 blocks, big cam series. But on the 3406B, when you look at the oil pan, it's got the deep sump on it, and towards the rear, and in the front, it's got just a little hollowed out dip with a pipe plug in it. So all you had to do was just pull the drain on the deep sump, and that was it. The mechanic had pulled the drain on the front portion of that pan too underneath, because the drain came out on the side of the deep sump, and that's all you had to do to drain it. Because I used to do my own oil changes, and then of course Waste Management like, well, you got to be a licensed mechanic to change your oil and filters and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, whatever. So here you got not a licensed mechanic, but they all, anybody had a, back in the 80s and 90s, you worked in a shop, if you knew what a wrench was and you could change oil or change a tire, you pretty much were hired. For the most part, it was not too intuitive to basically get in and know a lot, because there's no computers on the trucks then. You learned as you went. So he changed the oil, put that front little wallow in the pan, put that plug back in, but he never tightened it. So we already know where this is going. Tighten the back one. I drove the truck all day, so it probably got done on a Friday. This is like a Monday. But I made it through the end of the day on my last run. I was 1 mile from the landfill, and all of a sudden everything went up in smoke. The motor started clattering and all that, and I could see the oil gauge. It literally held pressure right up until the last gallon was out of it. So I limped it over, because the thing, it just sounded like a grenade went off inside the engine, and then just a lot of glass rattling around. So I got the truck, and I remember I got 8 axles on there. So with that, I'm pulling over and I'm flipping the axles, because you got toggle. I had 3 toggle switches to run. If you had your spread or a series of axles, plus the axles that were sitting behind the permanent down axles on the trailer, you also had a switch for that one. So got over on the shoulder, got out, and I'm like, what in the Sam heck? The engine was seized up then, so it wouldn't even, the starter just plunk, and that was it. I get out, and I could just see everything was just wet underneath, and I went behind the trailer, like just trying to track stuff, because I didn't really see the pipe plug out of the front of that shallow spot of the oil pan, and but I did see the underneath when I had the hood open. All the oil was, the front of the truck was pretty well painted in oil. So I followed it, how far back it went, and then I looked behind me, and as far as I could see down the road, it was just all, you could just see a stream. And I was like, that was freaking great. Yeah, so anyhow, that was a wake-up call, because that woke me up. Because back then, you listen to radio or cassettes, because, you didn't have cell phones and that jazz, so you had to bring entertainment with you each day. But, so I got on the CB, because I was close enough to the radio. The guys on the hill had CBs to talk to us when we got up there, and where to direct us and where they wanted the load drop, because we were dropping 120 yards of trash. So they're like, yeah, put it over here, back up here. So we were out of, we were separated from the local trash trucks that were coming and doing routes. But I was able to radio up to them, and the manager of landfill, the heads of state, their mechanic, and they brought a front end loader down because they figured they'd pull me back. To just hook me to a chain and pull me in the landfill off from the main road, and not enough air, to say the least. So we tried that. They came down. We could see the truck ran out of oil, nothing on the dipstick. So we were going to tow me, but no, there wasn't enough air to release. Just the down axles and all that stuff just wasn't holding enough air. So what we decided was they were going to bring one of their tractors over, semi trucks over from the landfill, and just hook on the trailer, and then we'll just have a hook come get my truck. So how did we play that out? Put the dollies down, unhooked the trailer, but I didn't have enough air. I put the axles down, so it was sitting on all the axles, but not enough air in the tanks. There wasn't enough. There was enough many tanks on there, but not enough volume in the tanks to actuate the axles and hold them down with a loaded trailer. And this happened to be one of the McLeans, the Canadian McLeans, that had a push ram instead of a walk-in floor, so the nose was heavy. And so with the dollies down, everything unhooked, they drugged me out from under it. If I recall, I want to say we tried charging everything up off the truck, just filling the trailer to give as much air pressure for the down axles, to that way the other truck could come up and hook to it, so it didn't teeter down on the nose. That wasn't enough. Pulled me out, and as soon as I got about 2 feet away, the nose freaking hit the ground, popped the bags. The dollies went through the ground. Punched straight through the dirt. Literally, she was just like that. And it's one of those, if you go back in one of my videos and what I did, it was one of those purple trailers with the 7 axles on there. I believe 7 or 8 axle ones, but it was one of those that they just nosedived. So they had to drag me down far enough, and then bring they had a 966 Cat, and they grabbed it with the bucket, and then we had to keep working it up and putting air to it from the other truck, and use the axles to get the air up, and then we had to board under the dollies. It was a lot of work. We made more work than there should have been, but we're able to get the other truck on under that, get the trailer up to the landfill, and the hook came and got my truck and just took it up to the dealership up there. This was in Venice Park Development Landfill in Lennon, New Lothrop, Michigan, Lennon area. And they ended up, we were just outside the entrance, but they shot the truck up on the hook to Saginaw and took it to the dealer. So the report was, when they got into the engine, obviously they found what had happened. There's no plug in there. Well, they went back, to the guy that changed the oil, and that he went off on everyone and blamed it, and he was blaming it on me, like it's the driver's fault. And I'm like, how is it my fault? I check the oil in that every morning and every night, because that thing is always towing under extreme conditions. So I said, how is it my fault? Am I supposed to go around and check your work by checking all the filters and make sure the O-rings are in it and all the plugs are tightened? I said, because if I got to do that, I'm going to do the damn thing myself, and you won't touch my truck again. But he ended up getting fired. They definitely just excused me from it, because there was no control I could have had over that. I shouldn't have to go around when a mechanic works on my truck and then go back and double check his work as a driver, I figured. So diesel truck sales up there in Saginaw, they got into the motor, and it come down to the only thing they could salvage in that truck 20,000 miles earlier just got an overhaul, in-frame overhaul. They said everything that let go in that truck, the only thing they were able to save was the block. They had to pull the block, crank, rods, pistons, sleeves, turbo, I think they were able to save the head and just revalve it, you know, new valves, because they had to take everything apart and clean all the metal that went right through that thing. So they had to pretty much do a whole flush on the block and heads. Basically, when I got it back, she was because the first, when it got the in frame at 450, and this was going on a 500,000 miles, I want to say, you know, high fours. By the time the second, when this the second rebuild from the blow up, when I got it back, that thing was turned up and she went like a rocket. And I was a nice little kid with that thing. That was like putting a big old hopped up blown Hemi motor under it, because that thing was going then. But I probably only ran it for another 6 months or so, and then the landfill by our home terminal finally got approved through the EPA, finished being built and approved by the EPA, so we were able to go there. So transfer station ended up getting, we had 2 of us running out of there at the time for many, many, many years, and we were hauling 6 to 7 loads a day out of there. But it came down to it, then it was just down to 2 or 3 loads a day, so only one truck, and the other guy had seniority over me. So my truck ended up being a yard truck, getting parked late, you know, less than a year later, and then I ended up jumping into roll off with a pup trailer, then in a front load and stuff like that. But that was the first and only engine blow up I ever really had in a car or a truck, but in my semi. And that was just over lack of knowledge and just, I want to say, partially gross negligence on the mechanics part, but very expensive to say the least, because if you know Caterpillar engines, you know you're going to pay more for that than a Detroit or a Cummins when it comes to buying parts in a rebuild. But I missed that truck. I told my wife just while we were driving out to Dallas and back last week, I said, you know, there's nothing like having a Caterpillar engine, good strong running cat. And I said, just a good hooded truck in front of you. I miss it, but I could be without it if we could financially be set that I could ever walk away from driving. I said I would walk away and do something different if I had more financial freedom. So I make do with what I got here with the Cascadia, but just wanted to give you a little backstory on that truck. A little bonus on that was not only did that go, but I did do 2 things on that truck that was driver error and driver neglect, and that was I busted 2 rear ends. And now I think my wife's on here watching, but that red Mac, I broke the rear ends on it twice. I am notoriously known to break rear ends. I've never known to blow a motor up, but I can break an axle like nothing else. The rear drive, I want to say, yeah, I broke the rear drive twice on that truck, because I didn't, when I was climbing the hill at the landfill with that heavy loads, both times at Venice Park, I didn't lock the power divider in. For some reason, I probably got the momentum going and I just didn't have time to grab it, because it was air shift power divider on the top of the dash. You just had a lever, you had a switch, and it was all air actuated. So it probably didn't kick in the first time I did it. I flipped the switch, but it didn't lock the axle in. And to split the power from the rear axle and then engage the front axle so both of them could share the load. So all the torque and pulling was on the rear axle only, and I snapped the differential. I didn't break an axle shaft. I broke the differential. I broke the worm gear in there, in the front, and I broke the pinion on the back. So I mean, I disintegrated that thing. All right, fine. Did it a second time, and I got pulled in the office, and I was pretty nervous about whether or not I was going to have a job, because I destroyed a rear end in like a year and a half. I went through 2 rear ends on that truck. But also learned to not be so aggressive when I'm off-road pulling loads So that definitely woke me up when I'm heavy hauling and I'm pulling off, off-road terrain and getting back on the pavement. Not to be, as one guy said, you're an aggressive driver. Could be good, could be bad. So it was always bad in my favor. But I broke 2 rear ends on that. The one thing I will say, in a manual stick transmission, I've never gone through a clutch. Whenever that truck was given to me, used or new, it still had the same clutch in it when I turned it back in. And it's the same with my 2 Cascadias ago I had with this company. I drove that for over 500,000 miles, still had the original clutch in it, where other guys were already getting them put in around 400,000. And I still have my original one, so that says a lot right there. But yeah, so anyhow, that was my way of mechanics neglect on the engine. He thought you had to pull both drain plugs. You only need to do the one. Left me stranded with about 3 hours of just getting that. And back then we didn't have cell phones and that, so everyone had to go run back to a landline, make some phone calls, get tow trucks out there and that. But in the end, got the truck back, ran like a champ, better. And yeah, I always, I miss that truck. But there's some stories behind everything. I've had that's one of the trucks I had the most miles in, next to my last manual shift Cascadia, my 2017. So anyhow, folks, thanks for dropping in. That was story time. Yeah, I did 8.5 years in the waste hauling business with the walk-in floors and push-out McLean Ram trailers and all kinds of stuff in there. But until next time, stay safe, continuing educating yourself. Knowledge is learned and not taught, and we will see you all in the next video.